Due to my time at university, I was always somewhat inoculated against woke because I'd seen the inner workings many years before it began. It's essentially just an ideology that finds out the answer before it asks any questions. In essence, the answer always was that inequality exists in society because white straight males hold all the power. The wokies just have to figure out why using their post-Gramscian, post-Marxist structures. But even for me, someone who was heavily inoculated against woke, at its very peak stage a few years back, had to question my beliefs from first principles. And this was because we were just being hammered by wokeness every day, at work, on the television, on the internet. Time and time again, you're evil, you're racist, you're sexist, you're stupid, you're ignorant, you're on the quote, wrong side of history. Yet when I broke things down, I always got the same answer. Wokeness always has been a form of rehashed Marxism, interpreting group differences through a lens of power relations. Now this is pretty standard leftism, but what made wokeism really poisonous was that it blended with Hollywood and corporate backing to manipulate a rootless generation devoid of identity and meaning, looking for Machiavellian ways to seem more ethical, more popular, more on the quote right side of history. This created a perfect storm which attracted all sorts of naive and ill people who'd found a movement through which they could make out they were our moral betters, they were somehow more empathetic, yet actually just scream and lecture other people due to their own personal failings. Now for years I expected elder adults to stand up and say, look, this is nonsense, you're acting like children, it's time to face the real world. But they never did because that generation were essentially liberal boomers. They'd lost their tradition too. They thought, well, I like Bob Dylan, I like Jimi Hendrix, you rock on kids, fight the power! Of course, these boomers didn't realise that they were the power in the eyes of these new wokies, and that meant that wokeism went from strength to strength. However, it did peak a couple of years ago with two key events. One, watching biological men beat the living hell out of biological women in blood sports, and two, when people started transing their kids. Again, even the centrist dad can understand a bloke might want to chop his knackers off and call himself Shirley, but when people start doing it to their kids, it's gone too far. After this, woke, while still being around and causing lots of poison in the culture, never quite had the same momentum. That was emphasised with the election of Donald Trump, after which woke seems to have lost a lot of its corporate and political backing. As I stated in a recent video, poster girl here in Britain for woke, Ash Sakar, has had a moment of awakening. Funny timing that, isn't it? She says woke went too far and is reverting to a sort of Black Panther Rainbow Coalition thing now. Next up is Sam Fender. He's a pop musician from the Northeast. He's gone to a more class-based belief now, as many leftists have. He states, the music industry is rigged in favour of privately educated musicians. He states here, people are very unaware. We are very good at talking about privileges, white male straight privilege. We rarely talk about class though. And that's a lot of reason why young lads are seduced by Andrew Tate. They're being shamed all the time, made to feel like they're a problem. Is this narrative being told to white boys from nowhere towns? People preach to some kid in a pit town in Durham who's got F all and tell him he's privileged. Then Tate tells them they're worth something. It's seductive. So let's check out some of Sam's earlier hits, shall we? This is from his recent song, White Privilege. Quote, because I'm a white male, full of shame. My ancestry is evil, and their evil is still not gone. Their evil is still not gone. Repeat ad infinitum. I'm sure this will give the working class men in Durham exactly the boost they were looking for. Next up is quote-unquote comedian Catherine Ryan. She says people are tired of the people-kind mentality in Canada, and it has a pendulum effect, and it's going to start happening everywhere. The audiences have now turned on the woke movement. Here's Catherine just a couple of years ago.
I'm home in my bathrobe, just sending a message of support to the trans community. You are loved. You deserve to be exactly who you want to be. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be here. And it's important to be a trans ally because there are some weirdos out there who take a very strange interest on who uses what bathroom and who's allowed to do what. These people, they need to be stopped because live your life, freedom. That's like what it's all about. Trans people are so entitled to that freedom. And I hope that I can be a great ally to you, hopefully be better all the time.
Oh, that liberal obsequiousness towards woke orthodoxy is always hard to bear, but this lady's got a gold medal in cringe. So what do we make of these people who only a couple of years ago were telling us that wokeness is for life, that they're there for the cause, that we're disgusting, horrible, racist, defective human beings with a key unit of our soul missing? Well, I suppose the first thing we can learn is that if we go back to the beginning, remember that wokeness was always about seeing the world through a lens of power. These wokies pretended to be against that power structure, pretended to be pro-equality, but in reality, they just want to be on the side that's winning. They want to be powerful themselves. That's why they got behind woke, because they had corporate and political backing. Another thing worth remarking on is the idea of ego and identity in all this. Now, on both political sides, people can tie their identity to a political position, and that's dangerous because when your ideology is challenged, you feel like you're personally threatened and you snap. It stops us seeing the truth due to bias. Now, all of us fall into this from time to time, myself included. However, wokeness seemed to be especially bad for this. You may remember many of the key adherents of woke would say things like, we're on the right side of history, we're on the side of good. There was almost a pseudo-religious tone to it at times.
Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
That was Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks there, with the typical woke vitriol and supposed moral superiority. But lo and behold, she's turned against progressivism recently too. And this brings us to key point number 3. Anna changed her mind because I think she was groped by a migrant or something, and then she complained about it to the left and they told her she was a racist bigot, and she finally understood. So in essence, this shows us that wokies are changing their minds due to cultural, economic and political power shifting, as well as personal experiences of how woke policies actually affect them. And this tells us something vital about human nature. Despite the millions upon millions of hours spent between left and right arguing about wokeness, people don't change their minds due to intellectual argument and reason. They change it due to deeper factors. It reminds me of Dale Carnegie's quote, "When dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudice and motivated by pride and vanity." There's a very valuable lesson in here, and that's that unless you're talking to one of those rare souls who really will approach an issue without bias and view it objectively, there's not really much point having the conversation because it will just devolve into an argument and then it's just two demons fighting each other. In the case of wokeism, we can see that the key adherents were drawn to it through a desire for worldly power and social acceptance. This leads to the key question, which is, if such people are going to follow the power, what should the power structure actually be? That is a key question the Western world now has to answer. If we stick with liberalism, we'll either be stuck with wokeism on the one side or on the other, traditional money power, or we can move back to the tradition itself, something which sees value in each individual human soul, but also believes in strong hierarchy in the external world to keep order. This, in my view, is the only path to a reawakened West. It's what I speak about on the Substack a lot. It begins with personal transformation. Do check that out down below if you're interested. Otherwise, let me know your thoughts and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.